Three separate stories are coming out of Las Vegas right now, and individually, each one is interesting. But when I put all three together and look at the complete picture they form, something shifts. It stops being interesting and starts being significant. I cover this league year-round, which means I spend a lot of time in May separating genuine signal from the optimism factory that NFL off-season coverage becomes almost automatically. Every facility produces encouraging reports this time of year. Every coaching staff is talking about different energy and new direction, and this being the year things finally click. I have been around long enough to filter most of that almost reflexively. What is coming out of Las Vegas right now is not fitting that routine pattern, and I think it deserves honest, serious attention before the rest of the football world catches up to it. Let me start with Jermaine McCollum because I believe this is the story with the deepest long-term implications for what this roster can ultimately become, and I think its full significance is still being undervalued by most people covering this team. McCollum is the cornerback out of Tennessee, 4th round, pick 101. The early OTA reports describing what evaluators are watching when this man moves on a practice field are striking in a specific way that stopped me cold the first time I read them. Credible reporters, people with professional reputations built on accurate observation rather than manufactured hype, are using the phrase freak of nature athlete to describe what they are seeing. That language does not get deployed carelessly by people who understand what careless language costs them. It comes out of someone's mouth when their analytical processing gets temporarily overridden by what their eyes are directly witnessing. It is an involuntary response to something athletically unusual happening right in front of you, and the people using it know exactly the weight it carries when they write it. But the detail that I cannot stop returning to is not the athleticism description itself. It is the specific observation about his knee. Multiple reporters on the ground described watching McCollum work through practice drills and said plainly and directly that if you did not already know about his injury history walking onto that field, you would not be able to identify it from watching him move. No visible compensation in his cuts, no hesitation in his planting and redirecting, no subtle mechanical adjustment of the kind that trained observers can read in injured athletes even when the athletes themselves are unaware they are making it. The Raiders are being appropriately conservative with his rep count, managing his workload with the caution his medical situation genuinely warrants. But the movement quality that made McCollum a consensus first-round prospect before the knee issue collapsed his draft stock all the way to the 4th is showing up on the practice field right now. In May, before training camp has even opened, let that actually land for a second. There were evaluators across this league who believed Jermaine McCollum was the most talented cornerback in his entire draft class before the health question changed every calculation around him. The Raiders acquired that player with a 4th-round selection, not because of a character red flag, not because of any deficiency in his football processing or his technical skills as a cover man, because of a medical uncertainty that, through the early weeks of OTA work, is not producing any negative answer when he is actually out there doing football things at full speed, and the organization's confidence in his trajectory is not just visible in the practice reports. It is visible in how they are actually using him. McCollum is working punt return situations at these OTAs. You do not put a player whose knee you genuinely worry about into a role that involves full-speed directional change under live collision pressure. That decision communicates organizational belief in a language more direct than any press conference quote ever could. If his knee continues responding the way these early reports are indicating, the ceiling McCollum brings to this secondary is franchise-altering impact acquired at a fraction of the investment it should have cost. That secondary transformation has been one of the most consistently underappreciated threads of this entire Raiders rebuild, and McCollum's health is the single largest variable determining how far it can go. Right now, it is tracking in exactly the direction you want it tracking. That is not a minor update buried in the middle of an OTA report. That is one of the most consequential developments happening anywhere in this organization as they move toward the summer. Now let me talk about Max Crosby, because this is the update that will generate the strongest reaction, and it absolutely should. Despite being absent from OTA practices under a structured recovery management plan, Crosby is reportedly ahead of schedule in his rehabilitation from the knee procedure, not on schedule, ahead of it. He has been doing independent work on his own timeline with the level of investment you would expect from someone built the way he is built, and the people with genuine direct visibility into his process are describing real progress across both dimensions of what serious knee recovery actually demands from a professional athlete. I want to slow down specifically on the psychological dimension because I think it gets skipped over too quickly in favor of the physical update, and that skip misses something essential. Coming back from a significant knee injury is not simply a structural question about whether the joint can mechanically withstand professional football demands. It is a question of whether the player trusts the joint completely when he plants and drives and changes direction at full competitive speed, when there is zero cognitive bandwidth available to consciously monitor physical feedback because the game is moving too fast for that luxury. Trust has to return alongside the physical healing. It cannot be rushed or placed on a timeline it is not ready for. When that trust has not fully returned, the performance deficit it produces does not appear in any medical imaging result, but it shows up unmistakably in how a pass rusher moves, how completely he commits to his rush angle, how explosively he attacks the moment the ball is snapped. Everything coming out of Las Vegas right now suggests the physical recovery and the returning trust are both tracking positively and tracking simultaneously. That combination matters as much as any scan or physical evaluation could. The expectation is that Crosby will not appear in any meaningful public context until training camp opens in late July. But when that moment arrives, the people with direct knowledge of his situation expect him present completely, not managing a recovery, not operating under any restriction, but locked in and fully available from day one. For a defense still in the process of establishing its competitive identity, having that clarity about Crosby's availability heading into camp is genuinely significant organizational information. But here is the dimension of this story that I think elevates it beyond a standard injury recovery update, because there is a layer underneath the health news that matters just as much. Crosby has been open about what the collapsed Baltimore trade situation did to him internally, a deal that dissolved specifically because another organization ran their medical evaluation and decided the risk attached to his knee was too high. Having your physical condition publicly questioned at that level, having a career-reshaping move fall apart because someone else looked at the numbers and determined they did not like what they saw, that lands on a competitor differently than the routine professional disappointments athletes learn to process over time. For someone with Crosby's specific competitive makeup, it did not land as discouragement, it landed as fuel. He has communicated to people around the league that he is arriving at this season with a motivational baseline that operates above his normal professional standard. And his normal professional standard is already operating at an elite level. A player at that competitive foundation with an additional deeply personal stake layered directly on top of it is genuinely dangerous for every offensive lineman and every quarterback on the wrong side of that defense. Now add the structural picture surrounding that personal motivation. The Raiders' secondary has been rebuilt in ways that change what a quarterback can comfortably do when Crosby is in the backfield. The pass rush support around him has been upgraded in ways that make him significantly harder to account for with single blocking. When a quarterback can no longer confidently trust that escaping Crosby laterally opens a clean throwing lane, every disruptive play Crosby generates creates cascading problems for the entire offense trying to account for him. He is arriving at the most structurally advantageous situation of his professional career at precisely the moment he has the most personally invested in making it count. That specific combination does not come together often in this league. When it does, the results are substantial and impossible to rationalize away. The third piece of this picture has been flying the most thoroughly under the radar of anything I have been tracking out of Las Vegas, and I want to give it the full attention it deserves, because I think it represents something genuinely important about where this organization is heading philosophically as a football operation. Jack Beck, second-year receiver out of TCU, second round last year. Everything coming out of these OTAs is pointing toward a player operating in a completely different reality than the one he was living in during his first professional season. Before I get into what is being reported now, I have to be direct about what Beck's rookie season actually was in proper context, because evaluating his numbers without that context produces conclusions that are fundamentally dishonest about the player. He played on 343 snaps inside an environment that was failing at multiple levels simultaneously, an offensive line that could not establish any consistent protection, a coaching staff unable to generate coherent system identity from week to week, a quarterback situation producing uncertainty that changed the offensive calculus almost constantly, an offense that genuinely did not know what it wanted to be. If you took nearly any second-round receiver in this league and dropped him into those exact conditions, you would produce a statistically similar outcome. Beck's rookie numbers tell you almost nothing about what Beck as a football player is actually capable of, because the structural infrastructure required to demonstrate real receiving ability at the professional level simply did not exist around him. What reporters describe from OTA practice is the kind of specific observation that actually changes how you think about a player's future. In a session where availability at the receiver position was limited, Beck was described as consistently visible and active in all the ways that matter to experienced observers, showing up for the right reasons, being present in the details. But the line that captures the entire story for me is the observation about the coaching staff. The previous staff, it was noted directly, did not appear to have any real plan for how to use Jack Beck. Watching the current staff work with him at these OTAs, it is apparent they understand his skill set with genuine precision and have built a role that fits it specifically. That sentence explains everything. That is the complete and sufficient account of why receivers disappear in one system and announce themselves in another. Not always talent level, not always physical tools. Often, most simply, it is whether the people designing the offense actually understand what they have acquired and then construct conditions where that specific skill set can express itself in real games against real defenses. Beck blocks with the commitment level that separates receivers coaches' trust completely from receivers who only see the field when the ball is coming directly to their number. He is unselfish in the ways that make offenses functionally sustainable rather than only periodically explosive. He creates value in possession situations, in contested catch moments, in third down windows where moving the chains carries more weight than producing highlights. Those qualities have genuine and specific value in the system being assembled around him, and this coaching staff has identified exactly where he belongs within it. Add the physical development picture. Beck arrived at this offseason visibly bigger and stronger in the ways that reflect deliberate, personally motivated investment rather than natural maturation. The kind of physical work a player puts in when he knows his rookie season did not come anywhere near representing what he is actually capable of, and he has made a private decision to make that gap visible and public. There is a specific quality of hunger in a player who knows he is better than his statistics suggest and arrives in the offseason carrying both the confidence of that knowledge and the urgency of not yet having proven it. Beck has that exact quality right now. He is operating inside a system that understands him, working under a staff with an actual deployment plan, with physical development that has raised his baseline, and with the internal competitive fire of a player who has real and specific things to prove. That particular combination produces breakout seasons. The OTA reports are not weakening that case. They are actively reinforcing it with each passing practice. Now let me step back and look at all three of these storylines simultaneously rather than in isolation, because the picture they form together is more meaningful than any one of them individually. McCollum's knee is responding in ways suggesting the Raiders may have genuinely acquired starting cornerback talent at fourth-round cost, with the ceiling of a player who was being discussed as a potential top selection before injury disrupted everything. Crosby is ahead of schedule, arriving at the most structurally supportive situation of his professional career, carrying motivation rooted in something deeply personal. And Beck is walking into year 2 with a coaching staff that finally understands how to use him. Physical development that has raised his floor, and competitive hunger that has been accumulating since a rookie season that represented none of his actual capability. I have to be fully honest, because this story requires honesty on both sides of the ledger. These are not guaranteed outcomes. McCollum still has to hold up across a complete professional workload in real game environments, where physical demands are categorically different from what OTA practice produces. Crosby still has to get through a full season healthy, and demonstrate that his recovered trust in the knee translates when games carry genuine consequences, and the margin for error disappears entirely. Beck still has to produce when defenses have prepared specifically for him. The stakes are real, and the forgiving conditions of spring practice have been completely removed from the equation. May signals are not November results. I am not pretending otherwise, and I am not asking you to. But what separates May, signals that lead somewhere real from the ones that evaporate completely, is whether they reflect genuine underlying structural improvement or simply favorable practice conditions without substance beneath them. McCollum's athletic ability is not a product of the OTA calendar. It exists independent of what month the evaluation is happening. Crosby's physical commitment to his recovery and the competitive character driving it are not performances staged for the benefit of reporters looking for a positive angle. Beck's actual skill profile and this coaching staff's genuine understanding of how to deploy it are not going to dissolve when real games begin and real consequences arrive. These are substantive things pointing in substantive directions. In the full context of everything being constructed in Las Vegas right now, Mendoza's development trajectory, the offensive infrastructure taking shape around him, the defensive identity being assembled with actual philosophical coherence, these three individual stories contribute meaningfully to a larger picture I find genuinely compelling. The Raiders have been an organization I followed with real disappointment for years, not because the talent was never present, but because organizational clarity never matched the investment being made in personnel. The decisions never quite connected connected to each other in ways that produce something durable. What I am watching now operates differently in the specific place where it actually matters, in the structure of the decisions being made, and the philosophy that visibly connects them from one end of the roster to the other. These OTA reports are evidence of that difference. 3 stories, 3 separate situations, all pointing in the same direction at the same time. Whatever is being built in Las Vegas right now is only just beginning to show itself.